So I'd like to welcome my first guest to the stage, Bridget Grewal. Please come up, Director of Packaging of Continuous Improvement at Magna International. Bridget, welcome to the stage. Bridget, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bridget Grewal. I'm the Director of Packaging, Magna International. I oversee the 140 plants that we have in North America as far as packaging strategies and guidelines. And recently, we have been tasked with the item on the sustainability accomplishments, which is neutral waste to landfill by 2030. So all of the OEMs and all of the tier ones have been tasked with the same sustainability objectives. And we have a team of people that got together that were working under an organization similar to AIAG, if you know them, called Suppliers Partnership. And this was Magna's first year. We joined in 2020, December of 2020, and this was our first year to be part of the group. And we found out that earlier in 2020 that the automotive industry had published some sustainability guidelines. And we reviewed those guidelines and realized that they were very complicated and not actionable, similar to how this executive summary looks up here. The words that are in there are important, and the words that they created from the OEMs, of course, were actionable, but they weren't simple to understand, and they were interpretable and things like that. So the team, after we got the tier ones and the OEMs together, we realized that we also needed some more expertise from the packaging industry. So we called in the recyclers and we called in the packaging design companies, and we said, why are you not designing sustainable packaging, and why can't you recycle the packaging that we do design? And so we came up with information from those two groups of team members that were able to fill some of the gaps that we had in our knowledge, and able to find out that really it wasn't that we were designing with bad materials, it was that we were securing the materials the wrong way, or that we in fact were using laminated materials that could not be recycled at the end. And we didn't think that it was a problem because we thought the percentage of the laminate was less than the 5% threshold. So we got together and we worked as a team for about a year, maybe a little less than a year, and we came up with this model here, which is, it identifies with a picture, first of all, because as you know, the packaging engineers at my plants anyways, they're working on production and they're working on trying to get parts out the door or parts in the door, one or the other. And they don't really have a focus on sustainability unless I tell them this is what our objective is and you will spend time on this. Then they want to spend as little time as they can on it because they need to do their real job, their day job. So what we did was we ranked these materials that are very commonly used in the automotive industry. Some of these materials were the same ones that were listed on the early 2020 guidelines, but we enhanced the understanding and the quickness that the packaging engineer or the packaging supplier could actually understand what we were talking about. So you can see that there's 35 materials that we addressed, and they're ranked as red, yellow, or green. So we came up with the term viably recyclable, and that would be something that's in green. And then we came up with the term not viably recyclable, and that's something in red. And something that is viably recyclable means that there's a stream already available. We have to enhance it. We might have to understand it. We might have to create, a network with that. But there is a stream that we'll be able to get that material into. The things that are yellow, it depends on how you attach it. It depends on where you are in the country. It depends on other variables on whether that material is actually viably recyclable or not. The materials that are in red are the materials that we have found across all of North America and across all OEMs and tier one suppliers that have not been able to consistently be recycled. So it could mean that the way that the materials are put together, that we have a polypropylene with a polyethylene, we have a foamed material of polypropylene and a injection molded polyethylene. If we put those two together and we secure it with a continuous loop of Velcro, then we're not going to be able to take those apart at the recycling center. The labor to take those apart is too expensive, and so the whole outside returnable container goes into the landfill with the internal dunnage. If you secure a corrugated box, which we have a really good recycling stream now for corrugated boxes, but if you secure that corrugated box to the solid wood pallet with screws or staples or excessive staples or fasteners that don't allow the operator at the assembly plant to pull the two apart, then the entire package goes to the landfill. So as we were making these, and we did publish the guidelines on June 1st. They're available in the Automotive Logistics website. We have them also available through Suppliers Partnership. And just to let you know that Suppliers Partnership is not they don't lobby. All they do is represent automotive. And they are in Washington, D.C., but they're not a lobbying organization for the automotive industry. They're only a knowledge-based organization that tries to let everybody know what we're doing. And that's what my real passion is to talk to you today, is that these packaging materials that we've been using for a very long time, and we're very comfortable with them because we know they protect our A surface, we need to make adjustments. And it can't be just Magna that makes the adjustment. It can't be just GM that makes the adjustment. It has to be the entire automotive industry. We need the packaging designers, we need the packaging suppliers, we need the the OEMs and the tier ones, and then we need the recyclers. And we think that if everybody takes hold of these concepts, because they're so easy to understand and that you can quickly become a sustainability expert in your company, that maybe you would take this document and you will show it around to your circle, and that you would let people know that we're working on it, we take it seriously. We have a goal of 2030 to be waste neutral to the landfill. And packaging, when we looked at what was happening in our dumpsters out back, packaging was a huge contributor to what we're throwing in the landfill. So that's what this document is supposed to do, is make it easy so that everybody can understand quickly and become their own packaging sustainability guru, let's say. So this is another sheet that's in the same document. So that first page was like the opening to do the red, yellow, green, and to actually give you a picture, because even if you're not a packaging engineer, we want you to be sustainable with the packaging. So if you're a purchasing person and you're buying your packaging, we want you to buy the most sustainable, viably sustainable product. So what we also did, because if you want to go into a little more depth, we did write a lot of document, but we also wanted it to be easy. So on this page, what we did, we kept the red, yellow, green ranking, and then on the right-hand side where it says learn more, if you're questioning why cross-linked foam is not recyclable or viably recyclable, that's one of our favorite Class A surface materials that we use in packaging design. And for it to be taken away from us, it really must be significant. And what we found out, because we never even thought that there would be a problem with cross-linked foam, what we found out is the majority of it is manufactured in China and then shipped over here in buns and then cut, and then we use the planks here. It's made out of things that are not, a catalyst is put into it, let's put it that way. A catalyst is put into it, which changes it from a thermoplastic to a thermoset. And that thermoset cannot be taken from a foam back down to its original resin and then put back into packaging again. Whereas polyethylene and polypropylene, they're easily condensed and then put into a log or a block that can be shipped with a financial benefit. And that brings me to the third part of the goals that we had, was we want to not only eliminate and restrict the number of materials that are going to the landfill, but with the resin that we invest at the beginning of our program, we want that to be a cost revenue at the end of our program. So we want to take the container, we want to be able to separate the dunnage, we want to take the polyethylene and put it through the polyethylene stream, and then take the polypropylene and put it through the polypropylene stream. And that money that we're putting into that recycling system is going to offset the transportation and the cost to manage that recycling stream, the labor and the resources and the, all these other things that happen. So in this document, which I'm not going to go through a little bit, it has the definition of viably recyclable, it has the definition of detrimental to recyclable, and it has all of these team members in it. We couldn't have done it if it was just Magna or if it was just one of the OEMs or a bunch of the OEMs. We needed all of these different companies that were in there. So you can see, along with the OEMs that are on there, there's also container manufacturing companies, packaging dunnage companies, and that's what we wanted to do, is to get a cross-functional team so that we could bring it to the audience and let you know that we're working in automotive on sustainability, packaging sustainability, and that we want everybody to participate and to get us to our goal of being neutral to landfill by 2020. And that's all I have to say for now. So I hope you get my message, and I hope that you'll join us, because sustainability and packaging sustainability is something that everybody can participate in and everybody needs to take a stand on. So thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you in a minute at the panel.
Thank you so much, Bridget. A fascinating and really important example there of real-life collaboration in the automotive industry. Key players, be it competitors or traditional competitors, suppliers, the ecosystem, really collaborating to drive on an important topic. And just to reiterate, those slides are available. Bridget's slides are available in the app, and those guidelines are available on the Automotive Logistics website. Other websites are available, but ours is best. So thank you once again, Bridget. My next guest, I want to invite an active member, active leader in GM's supply chain sustainability group, Jeremy Galanty, sustainability analyst, to give a short presentation on GM's sustainable packaging roadmap. So Jeremy, the stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So before I get started, some very powerful words from Bridget. I was able to work on that team, and when you have sustainability alignment, you can really do some amazing things, especially with such a big industry that we're in. So again, thank you for having me today. My name is Jeremy Galanty, and I'm going to go through a little bit of container sustainability, and I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to peel back the curtains just a little bit and go through some case studies of what we've been doing at GM over the past couple years. So before I get started, I really want to go through and just talk about some of GM's goals. So one of the main goals, 0, 0, 0. Zero emissions, zero congestion, and zero. The last zero. So where does packaging fit in? Zero emissions. So here, this really gets me to the GM goal for packaging. So it's 100% viably returnable, recyclable, reusable, or compostable packaging by 2030. So here's a little bit of a roadmap of how GM is looking to get to that 2030 goal. And you're looking at it and be like, I've seen reduce, reuse, recycle since I was, back when I was a little kid. But there's two key additions here, baseline and recover. So I'm going to go through, baselining. This is a very important aspect. So if you're traveling, let's say to Florida, it depends on where you're coming from. So if you're leaving from Detroit, Michigan, or you're leaving from Dallas, Texas, that roadmap's going to look completely different. So baselining of where you're at is important movement. And then second is reduce. Once you get to that point, you can really start looking at your materials, your logistics, and focus on being able to reduce those materials. Reuse, this is a very kind of a big thing in automotive. We've been reusing containers for 20 plus years, but in one particular way. So now it's really starting to open up our eyes to see, hey, what other avenues can we look at to reuse materials? If it's dunnage, expendable dunnage, can we reuse that and still take care of certain things by not adding more to the logistics aspect? Recycling, we just talked about the SP group and everything that we really collaborated together on recycling. It's not so much that we have materials that can be recycled, but how it's used and how that end life impacts are. Then lastly, recovering. You know, we want a healthy supply chain, whether it's getting parts to our supplier, but also getting returnable containers back to the supplier to bring parts back to the GM plant. So first, again, baselining. So current day, you know, GM had a really good initial systems. We went by the part number, we had packaging plans, but it really didn't dive deep enough when it came to sustainability. So looking at it, you know, we really wanted to take care of the extra work that we could be adding on to our suppliers. We don't want to give a bunch of busy work to everybody as they already have to go through. You know, you might have to submit 50 packaging plans for just wire harnesses. So how can we figure that out? Well, we did it by commodity basis. So now you're submitting one plan for all wire harnesses, and then that can really give us that background data to see where, hey, where do we need to put our efforts into? You know, what does it look like, and where do we really focus on creating and really driving that needle? So some of the lessons learned, you know, you build it right and they will come. I mean, again, don't add that busy work onto the suppliers. We want them to be engaged and actually use what we're presenting. So that was one of the biggest takeaways. And also, you can't manage what you can't measure. So again, getting back to that baseline to understand where you are and how you're going to get to that Florida on the map. So this is reduced. So this is again, when it comes to partnerships, you know, we do have Orbis here today, so this is one thing that we worked on in collaboration together. We were looking at what GM was currently doing. You know, we've been, last 10 years, we've had colored bases. Why do we have that? Well, when it gets in the manufacturing plant, it's really easy for a high-low operator to be able to see yellow, green, blues, very visible, very air safe. But in discussions, you know, with manufacturing provider, anything that was a colored plastic really came from 100% virgin material. So if you think about it, I mean, the base, that was about, you know, over 50% of the weight of the container. So changing it to black, we're actually adding 40% additional recycled content to our container. So we're taking out virgin material to our end waste stream, and we're also adding recycled content to our container, taking that out of other waste streams. Excuse me. So with that, we were able to take about 4,000 tons of virgin plastic or 4,000 tons of recycled plastic out of each waste stream. So it's very impactful. So some of the takeaways from this, honestly, simplicity can make huge impacts. As you can see here, I mean, going from the yellow base to a black base, and then just using colored tags, we still have that visibility at a plant level, showed huge impacts. And just to give a little background about this project, it's like this had to be approved by every manufacturing site within GM. So there was 90 stakeholders that went ahead and had to approve this. And that just goes to show where the leadership is and how important sustainability is becoming within our industry. And then also, this one did come at an 8 to 9% cost reduction. So there will be, you know, the overall outlook of sustainability is that it comes at a cost. Well, this is proof that it doesn't always come at a cost. In fact, it actually came as a gain. So going into the reuse, this is going to be kind of like a combined slide between reuse and recycle. So, you know, over the years, after a program has died, or I guess built out, we won't say died, but built out, we end up storing our steel containers in kind of an off-site, and we save them for, you know, larger programs to see if we can kind of minimize that capital cost at the beginning. Well, at times, you know, they get overlooked, but we're also moving so fast when it comes to thinking sustainable. So if it's footprints for packing out trucks, or if it's lightweighting of steel so we can pack out trucks, there's just things that we've improved, you know, every 2 years that if we sit on these containers for too long, they really become obsolete. And when it becomes, you know, from footprint size or, you know, even degradation. And that's what we saw here. So we were able to go through and, you know, going through everything we had, we were able to pull 45,000 containers out for reuse over the past, I think it was 5 programs that we launched. And then the ones that we couldn't reuse, we really looked at it and what are you going to do? We got to get that steel back into circulation and be able to use it in other areas. So we took that, we recycled that steel, and also been able to pull out just small components, if it's an aluminum bar, other things that we could reuse in future containers. So again, some lessons learned here is opportunity missed is an opportunity lost. So we were sitting on containers for emergency purposes, and we weren't able to use them in the correct means. So, you know, use them when you got them and get them back into the system as quickly as possible. And then also, with that, cut your losses as we went just strictly recycling at a time that needed to be recycled. So this one's really exciting for me. So this is when it comes to recover. This is that additional R. So what were we doing before? We were relying really on a manual process. So parts come into a GM manufacturing. This is going to be specific around returnable containers. And then we send it back to our suppliers. There's a lot of vision when there's parts coming in, but less vision on empty containers going out. So at that time, we were relying on a very manual process. I mean, there's manual inputs from both supplier and GM plants where there's a lot of gaps and lost data within that. So what have we been doing? We've actually looked at multiple technologies to start tracking our containers, specifically BLE, GPS. And so going through that, as a result of just looking at different technologies in a capital asset. So again, this isn't parts, this doesn't build cars, but these are containers that are to be used in high velocity turnover ratio. So we were able to recover 22,000 containers that were out of network over the past year. So little lessons learned on this is, a little goes a long way. So it's a very strategic in how you use each technology, as they do come at costs, or there's infrastructure around it. So a little goes a long way, especially if you can plan accordingly. And then transparency creates behavior change. So although we're not all perfect, we're not. So being able to kind of see that, hey, if something gets out of network, it's not at fault of anybody else, but how do you quickly get those back into network is kind of where that gap was. So I'm going to pull back the curtain just a little bit more. So these are actually 4 categories we found through utilizing of the GPS and BLE technology. So again, 4 buckets. The top left bucket there, we have missed ships and lost loads. So you can see in this picture here that there's actually a container at a GM facility. It left the GM facility, went out back. And you can see that it got moved from one stack of containers over to another stack of containers. In this actual instance, it was a launch container, so it didn't have a direct route back. It didn't have a typical process. But you can see that just even internally, sometimes there's a misunderstanding of what we need to do to get these back to the appropriate place as we either try, collecting enough to be able to send back. But this vision goes throughout. This is, again, a GM site. This goes throughout as some live data with the GPS. And then also unaccounted for off-site long-term storage. So again, we may overship a supplier. They don't know what to do with the containers. They get moved to an off-site warehouse. They get stored. Now the supplier's, using megawatt hours or kilowatt hours to provide lighting, heating, cooling, temperature, like all this waste when it comes to sustainability. It doesn't need to be there because they just didn't know what to do with our containers. So this helps identify that. The bottom left picture is just containers that are, out of network. So you can see there's that main vein, Detroit to Texas. And then you see that green triangle off to the left-hand side. You're wondering, well, how the heck did our containers get way over there? Now you know where to start looking and where you can actually find these to bring them back into network. And then lastly, and unfortunately, theft does happen. With these technologies, you might not recover from theft, but the one thing you can do is close off your leaks, and that will not encourage theft from happening again. So really to close this out, again, 20 plus thousand containers, or plus 20,000 containers were recovered over the last calendar year. So this isn't just like a onesie-twosie thing. We're not just finding one container on the side of the highway. 20,000 containers got recovered this year, so it's very impactful. And also, getting back to sustainability side, there's reductions in, backup expendables. So if you don't have containers in your network, that puts suppliers having to use corrugated board, pallets, wood pallets, extra processing, and then there's also that end-of-life waste. You gotta feed the system back up when the containers are lost. So it's all that extra resin, all that extra steel that needs to be put into the system when a container is lost to replace that to keep your network healthy. Then overall CO2 emissions when you're doing that. And then with the increase in container velocity, so number of turns, and then overall visibility. Again, on all 4 of those categories that we touched in the last slide, every single one of those items, it's really impactful to get completed in a quick manner, or else it keeps going. So again, that's really what I have today. I want to say thank you. With this, we did partner with GCC, so that was one aspect of it, is being able to see where the containers go and really help us with that process of identifying those leaks. But it's been very impactful, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and please do take a seat. We're about to jump into our panel, so I'll invite Bridget back onto the panel as well, and also welcoming to the panel Kacie Freeberg, Senior Director of Industrial Value Chain at Orbis. So please, welcome. So thank you very much. Some great insights there. We looked at partnerships, we looked at collaboration, what the industry can do together. Fascinating to look behind the curtain, as you put it, Jeremy, into what the industry can do on its own too. So some valuable lessons learned there. Kacie, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump straight in, and we've heard from Bridget, we've heard from Jeremy, so I'm going to direct this first one at you. What are you seeing in terms of the requirements and expectation changes from your customers and the wider industry, specifically regarding sustainability, sustainable packaging? We've heard a little bit about some opportunities, some roadmaps, but what do you see from your perspective?
Thank you. We are absolutely seeing sustainability being a big part of the conversation. It was one of those things that it was an end, or like the last part of that conversation, and now a lot of times it's driving that conversation. So we're seeing a lot of questions, and we're talking a lot about how do we get one more part in a pack to get less trucks off the road? How do we get the right return ratios? So how do we make sure that return loop is again getting less trucks off the road and maximizing our freight that we have? Also is where can we eliminate any expendable or one-way packaging? One of the best ways to eliminate waste is to not throw away one-way packaging. So how do we make sure that we have the right solution for the application and that we're meeting those objectives that both at the tiers and the OEMs have set for themselves?
Yeah, fantastic. Interesting to hear how much of a priority the sustainable angle is when it comes to packaging solutions. So, Bridget, Jeremy, I want to ask you from a company level, so looking at Magna, looking at General Motors, how big a piece of the sustainability puzzle is packaging within your companies? Clearly, there's huge gains to be had by doing the right thing, switching to greener solutions, but perhaps compared to other areas such as energy consumption, transportation, how does it kind of fit into the overall picture?
Well, at Magna, we always, I think in the whole industry, and it's sad to say, we always think of packaging last because we're so involved in doing production and making sure that the parts get out the door or the parts get in the door, that packaging, they just somehow think packaging magically appears and that it's just going to get there on time. That's always been a problem. And the same thing happened with sustainability. Until we did a poll and until we found out and actually did like my plants went in and did dumpster diving to find out where did this come from, and actually sorted the whole thing, then we realized, oh my gosh, all of this waste is coming from packaging. And so then we said, all right, we really need to do something. And that's when we realized again that packaging was thought of last when we were talking about sustainability. And we, all of us in this room, need to make it first. And we need to be able to combine together and be able to do this because we can do it. But we can't do it by ourselves. Everybody has to participate.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would say that, similar aspects on that. The one thing, like Bridget said, it's kind of this in the industry that packaging is the last thought of but first used. And it's been like that for a long time, but then you really, you start thinking about what the impacts are from packaging. I mean, it does impact material usage, it impacts logistics, it goes to the waste streams. I mean, it goes on and on, even if you start peeling back to LCA when it comes to, energy usage or the carbon aspect. So I think that's really starting to become, kind of filtering upwards. I mean, from a GM standpoint, we have published goals in packaging, so you can really see the change in making that a priority. And then plus, with one of my slide decks, I mean, I wanted to make a change. I had to have 90 stakeholders and leadership to make that change, and there was no red tape. It was really like, this is a great idea because of sustainability. So sustainability is actually being able to allow us to do things we wanted to do 10 years ago, but it just wasn't looked at the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting 90 stakeholders involved in a sign-off process is no mean feat, and perhaps that brings us on nicely to the supplier partnership for the environment. And Kacie, I believe Orbis have just become or recently joined up as members, having previously just been made up of the OEMs and tier suppliers. I mean, how important is it that the actual providers of the packaging itself are now included in that conversation? And how does it show that the conversation is moving in terms of driving real change?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's important that we're a part of that conversation. We definitely feel that we are the conduit between the tiers, the OEMs, and the material suppliers. So we have a great seat at the table to bring. I think the word of the day here has been partnership. So we have the ability to bring those groups together, and we're excited and very honored to be a part of that group.
Yeah, brilliant. And Jeremy, you mentioned that and Bridget did. Packaging touches nearly all aspects of the supply chain, all parts of the business. How is supply chain design integrating into the product development process, the logistics engineering process? How is it, rather than being an afterthought, which Bridget sort of mentioned it had been previously, how is that changing and that integration?
Well, I mean, to be honest, still at the end of the day, we do build cars, we don't build containers. So there is, that aspect right there. But when we're looking at it, there were certain long-term rules that would lead us into certain types of packaging for, 15, 20 years within GM. They're kind of those rules of thumb. Now that's really starting to kind of take a change. I mean, we talked about wire harnesses, and, the work on that right now is from our baselining. We really noticed that was our highest waste item, but it was over that 1,000-mile rule. So now we're looking at it, hey, let's work with our suppliers to see if we can design a returnable packaging solution that really incorporates everything that we need from a logistics standpoint or from that full supply chain standpoint, but just doesn't exactly focus on the part or what we've been doing.
So in your presentation, Jeremy, you also mentioned cost savings to be had, and typically in our coverage, our various conferences around the world, when we've had this conversation about sustainability and sustainable options, greener solutions have typically been coming at a higher cost. And I want to put it to the panel and ask, ultimately, is the same true for packaging? You've shown that there are some examples, perhaps not, but I want to delve a little bit deeper, and perhaps I'll start with you, Bridget, on that one.
Well, if you leave the dunnage and the outside container, we're pretty good about recycling it. Unless we fasten it wrong, then the whole thing goes to the landfill. So the dunnage is really what we're focusing on, our one-use materials right now. And if you focus on the dunnage, what you will be able to find is that if you can limit the types of dunnage that we use and kind of focus the materials so that there's an existing or easily built recycling stream, then we would be able to actually get paid for that dunnage. So what we're doing with the state of Michigan right now is we are we requested a grant in order to map out how a recycling stream would work for the automotive industry in the state of Michigan. And that means who can recycle what materials, how far does it need to go from the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 OEM into that recycling center, and what can be the outcome. We know that we're getting recycled resin is, depending on which one it is, 25 cents to 38 cents a pound. But if you can't get it there for less than 25 cents or 38 cents a pound, you're in the negative, which is what's happening today. But in the future, if we follow the guidelines and we're able to focus on the materials that are in there and increase the volumes on the ones that are highly recyclable that you'll get the money for, and decrease the ones that are difficult to get there at that price for the transportation and material handling and all the other things about it, then we're going to put ourselves into a positive stream, and that's going to be very easy to sell inside of my company. If I'm telling somebody, if you design your containers this way and you're going to be able to get paid at the end of your program, they're going to be all over that. I think that's so significant. The other thing that we did inside of Magna, which is a little bit different than your question, but I think it's important, is that we changed our ROI for returnable containers from 1 year to 3 years. And what that allows us to do, instead of that 1,000 mile mark that Jeremy was talking about, that means that basically everything in North America can be in returnable containers unless there's a limit on the line, or the part has some kind of limit that you can't do that. But other than that, everything can go into returnable containers now. And we've always been limited in the past to having that 1 year ROI, and you can't make everything, traveling that distance with returnable containers be in that 1 year ROI. So with Magna changing it from 1 year to 3 year, and I hope that all the tier ones that are in here will do the same thing. I know the OEMs are working on it. I think that we'll be able to reach our goal of, neutral waste to landfill in 2030.
And Jeremy, at GM, are you remodeling how you assess the cost of your packaging solutions kind of moving forward, factoring in sustainability, factoring in recyclability, and what you're able to get back from that, and what those future models might be?
Yeah, I mean, as kind of stated before, we are in that baselining stage, but there's been a lot of good that's happened over the course of the past couple of years. I mean, with the SP group and with Bridget's lead, we were really focused on expendables and items that came in the plant that were going straight to waste. So when you talk about, are there cost opportunities of reductions? I mean, even what Bridget brought up with, fastening a Gaylord onto a pallet, it's like now you can remove the cost of 4 screws, 4 washers, and now it's not going to cost us at the back end to actually move that to straight waste or landfill. We can actually move that to recycling. So it's like you do that on a broad scale. There's a ton of opportunity, especially where the industry is at current day. And the good thing with that is, again, with all the efforts done with the SP, is as we're moving to kind of capture, I wouldn't want to call it low-hanging fruit, but the items that may have been overlooked over the past couple of years, as the industry grows in that alignment, now you're going to have certain materials that are going to be more plentiful on the back-end recycling aspects. So you'll have, full trailer loads. You're not going to have half trailer loads, and you're going to be able to have those waste streams identified and all the way down to the grave through those methods. But it's also going to, really drive our suppliers to use like materials. That's should, I can't speak for it, but it should drive that overall cost of sustainability down in years to come.
Great. And Kacie, from your perspective, how are you explaining this customer journey, or this journey for your customers, encouraging them to invest in kind of greener, newer strategies, solutions? Is it less about the cost now and more about the long-term view? What's that conversation look like, and what does that journey look like for your customer?
Sure, absolutely. I think the conversation so far and for a long period of time has been that freight savings. So and that ties into that emissions. And so the other is that consumable waste, and that's been a big part of that conversation lately as well. I think the other big thing we've been talking about with our customers that's been really exciting to see is we've been able to partner with them on some other waste streams that they might have that we can put back into packaging materials. And it's helping them get to that net neutral. And where before that would have either been recycled and put to a different recycled stream, but having that come back into their own facilities, it's a great story. And it's a great way to think about be a little clever on where you're generating waste. Bridget, I liked your example of going out to the dumpsters and figuring where you're throwing things away, and figuring out what is really driving that, and how can I find an alternate use for that, and partner with somebody that can help you figure out what that might look like.
Absolutely. Bridget, in your guidelines that you mentioned for the SP, the guidelines include no less than 35 different packaging material types and designs commonly used in North America. Does such a variety have an impact on the industry's ability to drive sustainability? Is there an ideal number of materials and designs that should be used? Is there an opportunity to reduce this further from what it is, or is it at the ideal point?
Well, I think with that grant that we're getting from the state of Michigan that will help us define our first use case, this is the first time the automotive industry has collected together to try to see if we use, if we point at polyethylene and polypropylene, do we actually get the money that we think we should be able to get from that? I'm so happy to have Kacie joining Suppliers Partnership, because that concept that Jeremy presented of having yellow bases on black containers, and it was absolutely insignificant to change it to yellow labels or whatever the solution was. But your knowledge and being able to tell us those things, we haven't communicated that way, and it's in this forum, and that everybody's welcome to join the Suppliers Partnership team if you think you have input or if you think you need to learn more also. But just knowing those kind of things from the manufacturer is going to help us do things much quicker. Jeremy discovered that those yellow containers, that he could save all that money and that he could make the things more recyclable and use more recycled content. But whoever knew that? We make yellow, blue, pink containers all the time, and it was never brought up that that could be a problem. And that's why us all getting together and coordinating is everybody's little piece of knowledge. It's going to make this great big mountain move for us. And I think it's just a really good thing for us to focus on, and I think that little tidbits that we heard today are what's adding up to that great big accomplishment.
Absolutely. I'll flip it around a little bit. A lot of talk today has been about electrification, the battery supply chain. So, Kacie, I'll direct this one at you. With the ramp up of EVs and the emergence of the new EV supply chain, battery value chain, do you foresee actually a need for an increase in the number of packaging designs and materials used, be it on the hazmat side or on a safety side, color coding and things like that? Because obviously, certain things are sort of paramount in terms of hazmat safety versus sustainability. So how do you weigh that up, and how do you see that transition?
So the thing we heard a lot today is that there's going to be a lot of innovation and change in that area. So I'm speaking specifically around batteries, battery arrays. And from my seat at the table, I think that there'll be a lot of custom or specific packs by OEMs until we get to what standard looks like, and then at that point we can get to potentially standard footprint, standard materials. So until that ramp up, and I think if I remember Joe's graph right, about 2029. So the next a handful of years there will be very custom or very specific packaging for OEM, which I think is okay. I think how we support sustainability on that journey is think about that packaging life cycle as we're designing those packs right now for those builds that are coming soon. And as we ramp up, is how do we ramp up in a way that supports our initiatives and supports any sort of visual management that we need within the plant, kind of similar to the tagging that we talked about earlier with the bulk containers, but also ensuring that the packs are safe, and that was even the earlier conversation, that we're making sure that we're transporting all these materials in a safe manner.
Absolutely. Let's keep with recycling, recyclability. A simple question: what is but maybe not an easy answer? What are the simple steps to increasing the percentage of materials recycled? You talked about maybe standardizing on color, but have you got any other examples where we can really increase that rate?
Yeah, well, like talking about batteries, when we package something new, we tend to overpackage it. We tend to make sure that there's never going to be a failure because it's unpredictable what's going to happen. We're going to shut down 696 or one of the expressways or something like that. So what I would request from the packaging designers and the packaging manufacturers is that we look at like polyethylene and polypropylene specifically. If we're going to overpackage, use those materials. Don't overpackage and use unfamiliar materials or like thermosets or anything that we can't take back to our, if we're going to make a mistake in something that we can recover. Don't make a mistake in something that's going to go to the landfill. So, you know, I know when we start, I know that my plants are having a lot of different types of parts that have different surfaces that we've never, they're electronic surfaces that we've never had to package those before. So, you know, that nestability and all those things that we're really cautious about with those types of parts, as long as we consider the materials, kind of like what your question was, if we consider using polyethylene and polypropylene, which we have done a little study and realized that those are the two materials that are most recyclable or we have the best odds with, then if you overpackage it, at least at the end of the cycle, we're still going to get it back. So it's not going to go into the landfill. And that's really the goal, is we as packaging engineers, I know we overpackage all the time. I don't think we're going to stop doing that because it's too risky to see what the outcome might be if you don't package for 100% damage-free parts. But as we go through the program, then we learn and we say, oh, we don't have to pad it that much, or, you know, we can use this type of material and it's really easy, you know, for electric surfaces or something like that. So there is going to be a lot of change coming on, but if we keep that in the back of our mind, that if we overpackage it with something that's recyclable, then we won't hit the mark by that much. Miss the mark, I should say, by that much.
Yeah. And in terms of the recycling systems, the processes that are kind of currently in place, are they set to be scalable? Are they able to handle increased levels of recycling? Or is it still a balance of speed of operation, labor requirements? Can recycling be automated in terms of increasing that volume and hitting that level? Jeremy, I'll come to you on that.
Well, it's a very loaded question. It's very like a viably, you know, the market moves, and that depends on the materials, you know, selected. So I think, you know, again, kind of leading into your last question as well, you know, simplifying material selections, narrowing that down, and increasing the amount of weight of material that is end of life to be able to find those recycling aspects is probably one of the best measures to do so. And I also think there's another aspect of it too that, and I didn't want to bring it up today, but I do think it's something that it's been mentioned at a lot of sustainability meetings, but like circular economies. So again, you do have waste streams, and sometimes you do have recycling facilities, but you can also create circular economies where, you know, the packaging that comes out ends up going right back to that producer, and that really can change the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And keeping on circular economy, Kacie, how are you developing your products fit for purpose to safely deliver today's products, components, but also then be fit for purpose or able to feed back into that circular economy so that they're relevant and can be repurposed for the next vehicle model, the next, be it electric vehicles or other. So how do you keep that going? How does your design and your product innovation work around that?
Yeah, so something we talk a lot about is around, especially for those custom solutions with dunnage that Bridget had mentioned earlier, is how do we get similar like materials together, or if we're going to have a mixed material, so that ethylene and polypropylene, that we make it easy to disassemble, so that there isn't a lot of Velcro or metal attachment methods, so that it makes it very easy to pull apart. So whether that be at the OEM or at the tier, that they can do that and set their people up for success. So that's been a big part of that conversation. I think the next frontier is those Class A materials. I think that's really the tricky part, that we all need to work together to figure out how do we come up with the best-in-class solution for all Class A, especially chrome and piano black. As we know, those present some challenges when we ship those and move those around the country. And how do we come up with solutions that, while don't impact part quality, but also do fit in and support those sustainability initiatives that we all are working so hard for.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing if I could. And this is a request to the audience, and that one of the things that we're struggling with right now, the suppliers partnership team, is bag racks. So we have the metal frame, and then we have 5 to 6 different materials used in the bags that we're putting those A-surface parts in and out of. We haven't been able to successfully find a solution to that. So if anybody has an idea, or if you understand how those materials that are used in a bag can be recycled with a positive stream, of course you can take it and chip it and put it into the road or the children's playground or something like that, but it takes too much energy to get the parts to the recycler to get chipped to be able to put in there, so it's a negative stream. What we want is, if we can get the designs to be separated so that we use only Tyvek or only brushed nylon or only whatever it is that we could use, then we could secure it in that recycling stream. That would be a real benefit to us, because we've asked and asked and asked, and we can't really find a good solution. So if anybody knows one, just let us know.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. If you weren't expecting it, you've now got some homework to go along with your delegate bags. So, but yeah, it's a real valuable point, and it continues that theme of collaboration, that call to action. So this is something that automotive logistics can help support as well, driving that conversation afterwards, of course. Just in the last couple of minutes, we have Magna, we have General Motors, we have Orbis, 3 global companies. See, we're right now in North America. No points for getting that right. But how does this region compare versus your operations and strategies in Europe or elsewhere? Is there a difference, or is it universal in terms of packaging strategies, standards, and that drive towards sustainability? Jeremy, I'll come to you first.
Well, I do believe Europe is pretty far ahead of us in certain things, but it's been actually on a beneficial side. They've actually been able to go through some of the lessons learned where we've been able to kind of mimic that. And I'll just give one just real simple example is, Bridget was talking about bag racks, where we'd use cell dunnage with a part that might be a little bit misshape. We got some pretty complex vehicle parts out there, but now just using more of a soft form, more hanging bag style, we can increase densities within our logistics process, fill out trucks. So they're pretty far ahead, and again, in the Asian markets, when it comes to racking, they do a really good job with being able to use similar footprints from one platform to the next platform. So modular racking is a huge thing that came out of Asia. So, but the fun part about it is, we talk all the time. Like I'm gonna call, every 2 weeks with these other markets, because we are ahead of them in some things, but they do help us out quite a bit. So that collaboration's been wonderful.
Yeah, Bridget?
Yeah, and in the background of the suppliers partnership team, I also created a Magna team that included my European counterparts, and they were feeding me all of the benefits and all of the things that they were doing, so that I could then bring that to the suppliers partnership team and say, is this viable? Is this workable in North America? Because there are a lot of differences between Europe and North America, just size in general. And they're going through borders all the time, and we don't go through any borders for a very long period of time. So our strategies and the way that we set up things that we consider sustainable is different than theirs. But all of those ideas that they had in Europe that brought them so quickly to their, or closer to their goals of neutral waste to landfill, we incorporated those backdoor into the suppliers partnership document.
Great. And Kacie, from your perspective, how are your customers' demands change or different region to region, and how much cross-pollination, to coin a phrase from an earlier session, how much cross-pollination is there within Orbis around your strategies and how you're developing your partnerships?
Yeah, we're really lucky. We have a great team over in Europe, and they do a fantastic job of making sure that they're helping just like the GMs and the Magnas over there, make sure that they're maxing out their part density and doing a lot of what Jeremy described. And so we're seeing, it's interesting, some of their footprints are a little bit different. Their footprint requirements and their sizes is a little different. They tend to be a little bit bigger users of EPP in certain with certain commodities, but then I think their more common footprint, I think, is a good lesson learned that we can take more in North America.
Yeah, excellent. So we're coming to time on this session, but perhaps a final couple of questions, just while I have the opportunity. Looking ahead, and you're all invited back for next year's conference. You'll be delighted to know. But what are we going to be talking about next year? How much will the conversations have been moved on? What can we expect to hear? Bridget, I'll come to you first.
Somebody's going to give me an answer on those bag racks, and I'm going to bring that back for sure. And I think that we're going to probably, there's always things that we can do. There's never a time, it's going to be 2030 before we're going to say, okay, we did it. Now we are neutral waste to landfill. The other areas that we're going to have problems with right now is the designs that we've already created and that we're going to be sending to landfill. We want those to get diverted. And so we are going to have to figure out a way to do that. Somebody's going to have to say, I'll take all the cross-link foam. Somebody else is going to say, I'll take all the Tyvek material, or whatever it is. So we're going to have to work as a group, and we're going to bring those back next year and maybe tell everybody what we still need and tell everybody what we were able to accomplish, I think.
Yeah, great. That's a good point to end on. Thanks, Bridget. And Jeremy?
Well, my expectations are, through this process, it's really going to limit our waste streams to be able to understand. I mean, we're going to be past the baselining process, but I also think just with the work that SP Group has done, it's not just one mind that's trying to fix this problem. We're going to have all of our suppliers focusing on if it's the bags or if Tyvek is necessary in the next life. So I do think we're going to have just a boom of creativity, innovations that's really going to come from that on both the expendable side and the returnable side. And that's going to be both, I think, within North America, but I also think that's going to be, really getting into that international channel of parts coming from overseas as well.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And Kacie, final thoughts then, just to close out the panel.
Yeah, I think each OEM is going at it a little bit different way, and so my hope is that this time next year we're going to have some really phenomenal best practices to share, that we can continue to all hit our targets that we all know we have for 2030, 40, and 50 and beyond.
Excellent. Well, you all have your homework now, so you have 365 days, and we look forward to marking your work next year. But just want to say thank you very much for our audience's attention, but also a big thank you to our panel, Bridget, Jeremy, and Kacie. So a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.